Spring football is in the books at College Station, but what did it mean? We got Andrew Hattersley on the line from Gig'em 247 Sports to help us break it all down. Andrew, what's going on today?
How you doing? Yeah, feels like spring kind of flew by, right? Now we're on to the summer and then full steam ahead for the fall just around the corner.
Well, I think you get fooled by the weather, Andrew. You're in Texas, so it always almost feels like summer, probably from a guy that's used to being up north.
I was going to say it's better than living in Wisconsin, where it feels like it's the other way around. It feels like you're in a perpetual winter most of the time.
Absolutely. Well, I took in the Aggie spring game. It feels like it's been forever ago at this point with everything else going on and that we're both trying to keep track of. But, of course, everybody's eyeing this quarterback competition that I know technically is a three-man battle. It seems more like a two-man war. We'll see what happens once we go to August camp. But, hey, as I mentioned to you, I took my notes during the spring game, but I want to hear from the expert here. So I'd love to get your take on how the three quarterbacks looked.
Yeah, I think there were parts that that can be expected when they're in game action, because when you look at Haynes King, Zach Calzada, and Eli Stowers, none of them have really had a ton of game action at the college level. So there was some good to take from each, and there was some bad to take from each. And I think that's kind of what Jimbo Fisher came out of the game looking at as well. But one of his points of emphasis is for everybody else to step up, and at the wide receiver position, at the running back position, and they were missing some guys. But it still feels like heading into the fall, it's kind of that Zach Calzada, Haynes King kind of two-man race. And both flashed some moments during the spring game and led some scoring drives. But it's going to be very interesting because I don't think either guy really did a ton to separate themselves that game.
Yeah, there wasn't a huge distinction there. I know Calzada threw a really bad interception trying to make a play on the right sideline that basically got brought back for a pick six, although they stopped the player about halfway to the goal line. I think they wanted to set up some red zone opportunities or something.
That's one thing, is he trusts his arm quite a bit. And Jeff Tarpley, who works on our site, has talked about this as well, that he's probably got the better arm of the two, and the ball comes out of his hand well. So sometimes he trusts his arm maybe a little too much, where Haynes King comes from a coach's son and kind of understands that part of the game to take the check down and take the safer route, and kind of move on to the next play and live with it.
Now, of course, I got the perspective, as many people did at home, of watching the SEC network broadcast, and Jimbo having that reputation of being hard on his quarterbacks. If anything, actually, he was hard on the offensive line. He was pumping up his quarterbacks, letting them know, hey, good decision. Nice job there. You checked down or you threw it away or whatever you did. But he was on that offensive line constantly wanting them to give better protection. But they're in a pretty difficult situation right now going up against the defense, which, again, there were so many guys out. Difficult to gauge, but at the same time, you got Kenyon Green, who's a really established guard, but I understand he's moving to tackle. One of the best guards in the SEC moving to tackle, and otherwise you've got all new starters across the board.
Yeah, it was hard to kind of take a lot away from the offensive line, because you're going to have guys that are going to arrive in the summer. Bryce Foster's a local guy down here that you never know when the summer comes around. He could absolutely challenge for a spot. And Jameer Johnson is a Tennessee grad transfer. I think this almost showed just how important he might have been to have a guy that has experience playing in the SEC, and he'll arrive in May. So it was kind of hard to judge where, what to take away from the offensive line with some guys being out. And, but yeah, Kenyon Green will be one of the guys that will be making the move from left guard to left tackle. And that'll take some time. That'll take an adjustment too. And I think he was pretty hard on the offensive line, and the receivers were like these two spots where he's talked about guys that have played before are kind of held to a different standard to help the quarterbacks out who don't have a ton of experience. And so I think the offense will look quite different in the fall, just in terms of the offensive line, and also at the running back position. You didn't see Isaiah Spiller get a ton of carries, and Devon Achane is doing track right now, so he wasn't in the fold either. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that offensive line shakes out. That's probably the biggest question mark heading into the fall is can they find 5 to 8 guys that they can rely upon. It's not going to be the unit's not going to be as good as it was last year, and that's to be expected when you have 4 seniors along the offensive line. There'll be some growing pains, but I think they want to find a unit up there that can work and protect the quarterback because they struggled at times in the spring game with some young players playing.
Yeah, the offensive line in question, the quarterback, again, they're going to have an inexperienced guy there regardless of who wins a job, and it's a 3-man race right now with the 2 guys that we mentioned, and Eli Stowers, the true freshman. He got his work in as well. But so do you have anything in regard? Does Stowers have a legitimate shot in your eyes?
I think he's got some time to grow. I think this is more probably a King Calzada battle, and that's nothing wrong with Eli Stowers. This is his first semester on campus, and so this is an opportunity for him to grow mechanically with some things. One thing I was curious to see is if they would kind of get him to hold the ball higher, like you see Haynes King doing now. And that was one mechanical thing that I noticed from the spring game is he is starting to hold the ball higher, and he's got talent. He's a talented athlete, but I think it's going to take some time for him to grow.
Got Andrew Hattersley on the line from Gig'em 247, so you know the brand there. It's 247 Sports, Gig'em 247 on Texas A&M Athletics right there. Football's the focus here, of course. I'm going to lay it out this way. Not just the spring game, but everything you gathered from all the sessions. And again, you're limited in regards to access to the team and so forth, but reading between the lines in terms of what Jimbo and the staff said, what players said, and what video came out of, again, not just the spring game, but the entirety of spring practice. Where does this team stand today versus 6 weeks ago? And is there anything that jumped out at you in regards to any kind of progress or guys that broke out during the spring?
Yeah, I think they've still, and Jimbo Fisher's that ever hard-nosed guy that'll keep going. I think they're always going to be critical. I think they have room to grow, but I think one thing that was kind of confirmed is what you saw defensively, and even with the talent they have coming back, they're going to be just as good on that side of the ball, and that's going to keep them in a lot of games. I think that's what they kind of expected to kind of lean on the defense. There were a couple wide receivers. Devin Price was one that, kind of stood out this spring and showed in his second year that he's starting to make some strides. Jalen Preston was another guy that is starting to make some strides. So I think they're looking for a couple of guys to step forward in the spring game. We didn't mention Jalen Weidemeyer. He also wasn't at the spring game. So I think they're, once they get those guys back and, Baylor Cup and some of the weapons on offense, I think you'll see that offense look a little different in the fall. But I think they got accomplished what they wanted to, but with the knowledge that when they come back in the summer, there's more work to do to kind of get where they need to go for SEC play and those 4 non-conference games.